Yes. Oh, well, that's very good. I thought you'd be interested in the history of the Scottish song in an album form here. Songs that were very popular when I was very small, but nowadays you'll never hear them at all. These little displays here cause a bit of interest. And in those days, when you got a case of whiskey, there'd be a couple of jugs in it or something like that. Now, of course, you might get a couple of pieces of cardboard if you're lucky, you know. Yeah, a friend of mine went for a tour one time. We went over to the coast. So when we got down to Christchurch, you could see on the hotel bars and that the water jugs, black and whites and white horse and all that sort of thing. So I thought, oh, that'll do me. I'll collect those things and hang them up when I get home. People were bringing in the odd thing here, and I was getting one or so of each kind of thing, and I thought, oh, it's going to look a bit higgledy-piggledy now. I might as well collect every blinking thing I can get hold of, so that's more or less what I've done. I like it in the evenings when there was no television or anything like that. You're told of the tales of Bruce and Wallace and such like. Burns was the first one, of course, because my father was always referring to him. In the early days, a copy of his poems always sat on the mantelpiece, and at least one night a week we'd have a little bit of a session of reading some of his works. I still do that quite a bit.
Go to a funeral, the piper's only just got to blow them up. He doesn't have to play a note with me half the time. You know, and a tear will come into my eye, or, you know, the throat will close up, and it's just the sound of the instrument itself. It can be so expressive. Both my grandparents came from Lower Scotland, the Lowlands. My father was 15 years in the band here, but he didn't start bagpipes till he was 37 years of age. He was a violinist before then, and I sort of didn't have a choice as regards bagpipes coming into it. When I was old enough, the chanter was put there, and that's how it happened.
Edry's he's a rather complex character. He was a child prodigy back in his day. He was an A-grade piper at the age of 13. And there's quite a quaint story that he was playing in an A-grade competition. But he actually played the best, but wasn't given a prize because he was playing a half or three-quarter set of bagpipes.
The judges didn't like half size, so I went out in the last event with the heaviest set of pipes that's still in New Zealand, to my knowledge.
He borrowed a set of bagpipes, which is actually the set of pipes that I play now, off a guy called Donald Bowman, and came along and promptly won the next event.
Dad told me too he gave Edry his pipes because they wouldn't award him a prize on the half set. So Dad loaned him his pipes. And you know, when Dad was really getting old and still competing, and he used to march so beautifully, great long stride, stood so well, and he's marching around the board, possibly in Timaru on New Year's Day, and he nearly went right off because his balance is not so good when you get old, you know, like mine. And Edry saved him, caught him, stopped him coming off. I suppose he finished his tune.
If you're going to keep bands going, or piping going, you have to start with the young ones. You get them to think how their music sounds. What are they getting out of it? Are they making nice sounds? Are they enjoying it?
Cover the holes.
I can remember when I was quite young, playing in a paddock across the road from where I lived, and you know, I was always Wallace the Bruce or someone like that with a sword in my hand, you know, made out of a broomstick. So that Scottish thing is there. I've only been there once, but I talked about going home, not to Scotland. and that's the way I think I was brought up, probably. Well, I got involved with Greg Wilson through the junior pipe band here. He'd be probably the best in New Zealand. On the ranking of overseas, he'd be in the first, 3 or 4.
His piping career started at the age of 9 when he was taught by Airdrie Stewart and continues to have lessons from Donald Bain. His major successes include the Braemar Gold Medal and the 1994 Bratach Gorham. Ladies and gentlemen, Greg Wilson.
And he's been a very heavy influence, not just on me, but on a lot of folk in the Dunedin, especially the Dunedin area, I think, of in recent times, the last 15 to 20 years, and perhaps even more. He does a lot of teaching the young folk, and still teaches people like me. Oh, he's supreme, yes. Very good.
When you go along to the competitions and everything, it's like you're at the actual thing and you'll get up like a proper person, proper Scotsman.
They're definitely my great-grandfathers. We don't know for certain whether they're my great-great-grandfathers.
I thought 25 years ago, perhaps, that it was going to die out. But in recent times, it's come up well. Things work in cycles. Don't rush that. I think we'll go another 100 years, I think, hopefully.
I left New Zealand New Year's Eve 1972, 23 years later. Myself and my wife and 2 little children are now making plans to return to New Zealand. The idea was, certainly when I came to this country, was to see where the grandfather came from. But the principal reason was to come and learn and compete on the piping circuit here in Scotland. Piping-wise, you have to compete in this country, Scotland, to get any recognition. And I knew after the first year that I wasn't going to be ready to go home. The world's full of very, very good pipers, but it's only the very lucky ones that get chosen to come here. The standard of the New Zealand piper at the top level is very good. It's not unusual for there to be 2 New Zealand pipers here today.
New Zealand is a very, is a small country with a small population, but there's a very significant amount of the population that are Scots, from Scots descent. But I've heard it said that they've got more pipe bands in New Zealand than they do actually in Scotland. My starting to play the pipes was more of an accident rather than design. But if you ask me about Scottish history or just about anything else Scottish, I mean, I don't have much clue. Although that Braveheart movie was was very good, but no, it's the pipes. That's it, really.
And in first place, Murray Henderson.
Home is New Zealand to me. People of my father's generation talk about Scotland as home, simply because their father or parents have referred to it as home. I see the same thing happening now on our return to New Zealand. Patricia will be referring to home, and the children will probably have the same feeling that I had growing up as a youngster.